Hey, everybody, I'm just going to do a quick recap of a class that I've taught before. I was teaching it again, just a group of people I had taught it to a year ago, and it was so amazing how much they had forgotten about trauma and journaling. So I'm going to just recap a couple of slides today for all of you who took this class in the past. There is the longer version. It is online, so you can always see it there. But I'm going to share my screen with you right now. Again, the topic today is journaling out of trauma. And again, I always do the disclaimer, this is not health advice. This is really about talking about another way to kind of get at some of the things that you're working on in your prosperity mindset. So when you're thinking about that, again, if you need treatment, go see a doctor. This is not medical advice. It doesn't represent medical advice. It always means, hey, use this as a tool in conjunction with your other things. But the number one thing that I remind people about is there's a really big difference between traumatic events and trauma. Trauma is something that is there to be let go of. If you've ever been an athlete and had a bad experience and you've had a coach that just says, shake it off, right? If you've ever watched a dog who had something where they were scolded and they just kind of shook it off, we have a physical response to shake things off, but shaking off things emotionally isn't as easy as just shaking your body. It is, although your body does shake in a traumatic experience, that's kind of interesting. But it is that we have to do some other work to process it. So when you're thinking about journaling, it's a tool to be in mindful isolation. I'll talk about that again, is mindful isolation. It's a way for you to get some time with you. And you really want to be able to process that in about 15 to 20 minutes in a day. And when we are looking at why is the number one reason why I'm teaching this in prosperity mindset is because it is crucial that you let go of unhealthy habits, emotional traps that you used to have, or other mindsets that were keeping you in poverty mentality. That if you have stopped learning new things, or you got stuck at a time in your life, and you haven't done the recovery work, you'll just keep playing the same picture over and over again. So we really have to think about ways that we can be alone with our thoughts and process them for the purpose of letting go. And it is also the ability to find meaning and positivity in our life change. The reason that I love journaling is, one, I've been doing it for a really long time. I have journaled and kept my journals for well over 45 years. So it is, for me, something that I have tried all sorts of different kinds of journaling. And the number one thing that I can safely say is that it helps sort context. It helps sort what was it about that situation that really affected me. I have journals from other parts of my life, so I could go back to how I processed it 20 years ago to how I processed it now. And we don't look the same, right? So sometimes we're coming back at trauma as an older, wiser self, and we're coming back to our trauma with more knowledge and insight and inspiration. So one of the things that, even if your trauma happened a long time ago, there are always steps that you can take to start to overcome the pain, to find a new way to connect with yourself or others. For me, the number one piece of that is to try to find emotional balance. That I can definitely say that my dexterity in how does something that was traumatic impact me now, by working on it in my journal over and over again, it really gave me a lot more dexterity. It gave me some depth, some aptitude. It gave me, writing is kind of the brass tacks of how you can gain the skill of processing stuff. So that's why I'm a fan. And I put up the definition of mindful isolation because I think it's important. because this is not a new technique. This has been used for humanity in a really long time. And it's about taking ourselves into seclusion and getting into what is here. So you are looking to sort and strengthen what you have. And in order to do that, you have to kind of take that time to sort out what is on your mind. And there's a million different styles to do that. And I'm going to encourage you to use many of the different styles of journaling to do that. When we look at trauma, I remind people about this item, and this is what came up. This is actually why you're getting this video today, is the two things that from our last class, the two things that came up for people that they didn't remember from the original was that trauma doesn't have to be something that physically happened to you and your body to be trauma. That it doesn't have to be that you were physically harmed or that you were in a life-threatening situation. That trauma is any situation where you have an emotional experience that left you frightened, that left you feeling helpless, that left you feel overwhelmed and isolated. All of those things can result in trauma. It is a subjective emotional experience of the event. It is not the circumstances. It's not the objective circumstances. So somebody else's trauma isn't bigger than your trauma. It's just trauma. So it's just a category. So we don't measure people's trauma. Well, that's not really trauma. They didn't really get hurt or whatever. No, we're not there to do that. It is, what is it that you're holding that you felt? And I will tell you, the more frightened and helpless that you feel in the situation, the more likely you are to be traumatized. And that's true of everyone around you. When we look at childhood trauma, especially, if you were a little person, it's really easy to have felt overwhelmed and unable to change a situation. So that's also why we see so much childhood trauma in such a variety of ways, because we were little people or we were younger people, and that there just wasn't enough, that there just wasn't that piece. So one of the things that I remind people about is that there is something called psychological trauma. And psychological trauma is also, a lot of times, it can leave us with very much upsetting emotions. It can leave us with traumatic memories. It can leave us with anxiety that doesn't go away. And when we look at psychological trauma, this is what therapy's for. This is why we have therapists. But it is a place for you to, a journal is a place for you to start. It's a place for you to start today. It's a place for you to start looking for understanding on your own feelings and emotions in a safe place that you don't even have to share with anybody. Of course, I'm always looking to share, but sharing sometimes isn't available first, right? Sometimes I'm not able to build that community by sharing feelings. Sometimes that's just not permitted in my life. So sometimes, and sharing has to be done in a safe place. You can't share if you're not safe. So, but if you are in a journal, you're mindful isolation, you're alone, that's a good place to share. And it's sharing with yourself. And if you are finding that you are numb or disconnected or unable to kind of connect with the world around you, it's a great time to have mindful isolation. It's a great time to just put it in a book and to give yourself some other questions. Because the piece I remind everyone about that I feel like we never talk enough about is trauma is meant to be released. We are not here to keep trauma. This is, we're not having a trauma contest. We are here to get it away. And that you have to do, again, by holding the self in esteem, right? That we will hold and appreciate the situations that our life has had. We will hold them with generosity. We will shield them to be close to you, and then we will care for them. We will strengthen them. And one of the things that came up from the last class that people were forgetting is how much everyday trauma it is to be in the world right now. Relationships, money, situations, toxic people, health issues, blame, shame, imposter syndrome, stressful work, unhealthy environments, anger, powerless, being an undirected person, having no path or future that you have planned out, right? We have depression, addiction. We have not enough time, too much time, not enough resources, too many resources, too many choices. We have loneliness. There is so many things that are slapping at us every hour of the day. And people don't take time for reflection. And that's the mindful isolation. We have to go in every day. Some of you will do this through meditation, but again, you're looking for any tool that you can take every day, something. It might be to take out a run and clear your head. It might be to take a minute to journal, or 15 minutes to journal. It might be to take 15 minutes in meditation. It is a variety of choices to process the trauma that we have in our everyday life, but to also go back and reformat what is the trauma that we've had in the past. So 40%, when we look at cognition, cognition is the number one way to increase here, right? So cognition is the front part of your brain. That is the part of your brain that does all your executive functioning. When someone's in trauma, their cognition is going to go down oftentimes by 40%. So if you are in trauma, you're not thinking clearly. It's just that simple. Your brain has shut that off. And what we have found, and we meaning all of these other people that aren't me, we meaning all of the studies that have come out, is that expressive writing, right? Writing to yourself, taking that mindful isolation can improve how you feel physically, but it can increase your psychological psychological health. And it does that because it helps bring back that cognitive function. And for those of you who are gratitude lovers, right, that gratitude journal, I'm going to switch to that slide. Those gratitude journals are the fastest way. Like if you did nothing else but just do a gratitude journal for the summer, or for just the season, or for 21 days or whatever, it will help reprogram that, because what it does is it helps that brain go not to the troubling and upsetting thoughts that it's used to grabbing. It helps it grab happy thoughts. And then when you have a happy thought, right, your body gives you some dopamine, or it gives you a reward. And so those gratitude journals in general, the reason that I like taking time for gratitude is because it helps the cognition get some actual medicine into it. And that medicine is often called dopamine, right? But it'll help bring that grabbing, that happy thought, and it'll help bring that cognition back online. And you don't have to do it for very long, but it is where we see people really assigning it. So that was the second thing that people had forgotten from class. One was, right, what is the definition of trauma? And that trauma doesn't have to have a physical thing that happened to you. It is an emotional conversation. And that the cognition that you have, your ability to remember things when you're in trauma, goes down really a lot. So if you're carrying around a daily dose of trauma, it's super hard to think about anything. It's hard to grow. And you can't be in growth and survival at the same time. So if you have a life that's really combatively crazy, there's no place to build prosperity in there, because you're just in trauma mode. And the way you can help yourself immediately, right? Hold the self in esteem, go into mindful isolation, and start asking yourself some questions alone. Start sorting and strengthening the conversation with yourself. Now, this is in the longer version that's available online. on the whole long class. I just wanted to get you to those pieces that I like the most. And sometimes it's just looking at writing prompts will work for you. I like these fast pages, and fast pages are really when you just set a timer for 5 minutes and you just go, let me write out everything I have on that topic, right? What do I say positively about people and why? And that's, again, another piece of the cognition, another question to ask, right? What do I say about people positively and why? It helps you understand your internal reward system, and it helps you start grabbing at happy thoughts. And it helps you start to understand, are you actually a positive person about anyone other than yourself? And are you building community with your words? Are you using that as a foundation? Because we're magnifying out, right, from a point of view. If I'm magnifying out from a place of victimhood, I'm only going to give myself more opportunities for victim. If I'm coming out and radiating from from a place of wonder and recognition in the world, wow, I'm going to get more wonder and recognition. So that's really what I wanted to kind of talk about today, was reminding you that journaling for trauma, it's a big deal. Mindful isolation, 15 minutes just to yourself is super helpful. If your brain isn't working and you're in your prosperity work and it's not working, go back and look for trauma, because it might be a clue. It might be a clue for you. So thanks for taking the time to be with me today, and I will see you again soon. All right. Bye.